I had the great fortune of having a background in philosophy and deductive logic before I transpired on my spiritual journey and my spiritual path. I had somewhat of an awakening that is very supernatural and numinous in nature. And I know I'm not the only one that has these types of experiences, but I am getting to the point to where these experiences in many ways shaped why I am the way that I am and who I am today. And I think one of the reasons for these experiences that I had that were very supernatural in nature was to bring a bridge for men to walk on, and a spiritual bridge, that is, a metaphorical bridge as well, to walk through and on to get to a place where they are no longer on the island of loneliness. They're no longer secluded on the beaches of shame. They're no longer just running about like a maniac, and they're sitting in these stalls that are just waiting for anything to happen. It's this bridge that leads them to the wilderness. It's a bridge that leads them to the wilderness of freedom. And this whole sense of manhood that is being shamed and ridiculed into our society, it is so bad and it is so covert that we have neither the vocabulary to describe the depths of the ineptitudes of this terrible, terrible thing that is going on with men, nor do we have the ability to truly fathom the grand consequences in the long term and what the significance of whatever it is that's going to happen is going to look like. Really down the line, we have feminism, the fiat system, the education system, the government. It's all corrupt, right? It's all been corrupted, and it's all corrupting the youth. And I don't say this kind of stuff lightly. I don't really say this because I want to be, rugged or contrarian. I'm simply a person that is aiming to live in the truth and the spirit, because I do follow Christ, and it is my sacred duty, I see, to say that men ought to be proud of their masculinity. We're meant to be free in that wilderness of freedom. We're meant to thrive in chaos by being the calm, collected, cool ones. We are the silently social people. We are the leaders among the sheep. We have to be. We must be, because there's no other option for us to do so. The only reason that I see to keep going with what I'm doing is because there is no other better option. Otherwise, I would have quit a long time ago. And I was talking to somebody today in my physical community, and this man, who is a bit older, granted, but I mean, you might say he's a boomer, but it's amazing how out of touch these people are with the struggles of the modern day. And I hope to God that when I get that old, if God, by God's grace, I do get that old, I hope I'm not as out of touch as some of these people are with the struggles of the average person, specifically the average man in our day and age. The average man is belittled. The average man is shamed. The average man is coerced, all into making himself spiritually castrated. All at the low cost, the low price of his own ability to think critically. And this is why I think philosophy and deductive logic really allowed me a proper foundation to be where I am today. And we are doing a Art of War class series that is specifically dedicated toward finance, It's going to be for iron-minded wealth, where we're going to contribute the art of war principles and Stoic principles into the financial realm and how to navigate the financial realm with that. The issue with this is that many people who are spiritual do not see the need for finance. They think, well, Jesus was, poor, and if they're Christian, that is, right? Oh, well, Jesus is poor, and I don't see the need. I'm completely detached from the world. And yet, when you need money, what's the first thing that happens? What happens? Well, you kind of freak out a little bit, right? You get a little anxious. When you have a little bit of money, for most people, everything's fine. You live like you're making $1 million. But that's the issue, isn't it? You're living way above your means most often. And this is why, in order to be truly masculine, you have to understand your own predicament. You have to understand your place in the wilderness of freedom. You have to understand what kind of resources are available to you and what are not available to you. And it's my aim to make videos like this and to give consecrated information as much as I can, to the degree in which can benefit others for the exact principle of their own livelihood. Because the problem with many people is that they don't actually place value on their own life. They don't actually place value on what it is that's going on with their own lives. They don't see the value in having a backbone. A lot of men don't see that. They don't see that having a backbone is going to be key to moving forward in the progressive years. Because a lot of people are saying that the future is female, right? Even this boomer dude that I just mentioned. And it was as if he was completely oblivious to the fact that these women are all sleeping with whomever and whatever. This woman, who is obviously, I can see with my discernment, I can see a woman who I know for a fact, just based off of the way she's carrying herself, the type of clothes that she wears, the amount of tattoos or piercings, the higher likelihood that she's going to be promiscuous. Now, what she does is what she does, but the probability is the probability. Now, I'm not saying there's a correlation and a causation with this, but I am saying that it is appropriate for you to discern whether a woman is worth your time as a man. It's okay to not pursue a woman that you find to be spiritually revolting, and repulsive. It's okay to not pursue a woman that is not in accordance to what your standards are. And this guy was asking me, he said, oh, so are you married? And I said, no, I'm not married. He's like, oh yeah, you're not ready yet. And I said, no, I've been ready for years. And he says, well, then why aren't you married? And I said, because these women aren't ready for being mothers. They're just not ready. And he looked at me as if I was the first person to ever critique a woman in my life, or in his life rather. And I just was thinking to myself, I wonder what I wonder what his thoughts were. And he kind of alluded to the fact that women have a hard time and all this stuff. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, this is the same type of propaganda that we've been fed for years, thinking that women have a hard time and all these things. And it's never been easier to be a woman. It's never been easier. And yet at the same time, it has never been more difficult in many aspects. I mean, really, the antidote to a lot of these problems in relationships on the women's end would be to lose weight, put on a dress, and please your man. It's really that simple. Whereas with the men, it's not as simple, but I suppose you might say that it is as simple, but it's not as easy to carry out. For men, it's simply don't let people take advantage of you. do things better, and value yourself as if you're someone worth investing in. This is one of the biggest things that I see that is most terrible when it comes to the way that men view themselves. They don't see themselves as someone worth investing in. And they're so frightened to take a chance on themselves because they're afraid to win. They're afraid to be seen at the top. They're afraid to be seen as the successful person that now they have to live up to their own standards of what they actually want. It's easier to blame everything going on rather than to play the system. I will say this again and again until every single person that watches my channel understands that you have to consolidate everything and you have to play the system to play the system. It's very simple. It's very easy. We must value ourselves, though, as men. Men shaming themselves and allowing themselves to be put under women is exactly what got us to this terrible place in our lives. Women are the most entitled people I've ever seen. Everybody says men are worse. Although the statistics say the men are the dogs, right? No. In my experience, I've seen way worse things, and women are way more secretive about it. They just don't want to admit it. And of course, these hoes don't want us to exploit that. Of course, they don't want, this is something that, of course, you guys, of course they don't want us to expose the truth, because deception is their game. At least the women that don't mean what they say. There are women who mean what they say and say what they mean. But for the most part, about 99% of women will gaslight you if you're not careful. If you cannot see through the BS, they will gaslight you. It's just the way that it is. Because they are designed to get and extract the most amount of resources from a man as possible. It's just the way that it is. You have to set the standard, you have to set the boundary, and you have to really put yourself in a position to where you're going to be the kind of man that not only she needs you to be, but that you need you to be. You have to be the inner father to some degree for your inner child. And I don't really like using those terms simply because people can get kind of lost in the system rather than the interpretation, but it is simply a fact that there is a part of you inside of you that channels an archetype of something more, and there's an archetype that channels that fatherly figure and that lesser figure, which is the child. And it's not that the child is lesser, and it's not that the child is more or less capable per se. It's just different types of archetypes. And anybody that understands Jungian psychology is, or at least is acquainted with it, will have an understanding and recollection of what I'm talking about here. And I understand with full understanding that not everybody's going to get this. However, it is my sincerest hope that if you are still listening to this, you do your due diligence, you do your research, you see yourself as someone that is valuable, and start treating yourself like you are. It's okay to be calm, cool, and collected. It's okay to not have to tell everybody what you're doing and what you're up to. It's okay to not watch the sports. Okay, because I'm convinced sports is an addiction way worse than heroin for some of these guys out here too. Because they might not be partaking in drinking or smoking or whatever, but holy smokes, they are more in tune with what's going on in the NFL than they are with their own lives. And here I'll get flack for smoking a tobacco pipe once or twice a week for 20, 30 minutes, depending on how much I put in there, right? Because anybody that knows how to smoke a pipe knows that it takes about 20 or 30 minutes or so, depending on how much you put it in. So I'm spending about maybe an hour. Let's overestimate. I'm spending about an hour in my vice. Whereas some of these dudes out here live and breathe sports, They live and breathe celebrity gossip. They live and breathe video games. And yet I'm the bad guy because I choose my vices a little differently and I have more self-control over myself in the long term. I have pride in my masculinity, but I'm not prideful. Okay, I'm not prideful. This is probably something to very much so clarify. Because when I say men must have pride in their masculinity, it is not to say that you should be prideful. It is simply to say that men who are proud in a bold, lion, righteous kind of way of who they are simply have better outcomes. When you count your blessings more than you're counting your burdens, you naturally become more proud and pleased with who you are. So stop counting your burdens and start counting your blessings. And with all that being said, I hope that this message was useful and insightful for you. Stay blessed. Peace.